Welcome to the annual research review by the Sustainability Geophysics Project. I am Parth Hasabnis and today we'll be going over my research project, Urban Seismic Event Detection and Classification. The motivation for this project comes from the constant video surveillance that is employed in urban environments. This constant visual monitoring can lead to the breach of privacy for many individuals. While urban monitoring is necessary to track sensitive events such as accidents, there is another data source that we can take advantage of, which is audio. Urban ambient noise is rich in information and has the benefit of being discrete while needing less resources to store and process. In any urban environment, we can observe two main sources of information. First is traffic, and second is pedestrians. We can easily identify these events through their signature sound. To visualize these audio signals, we have two main representations. The first is a time series representation which almost everyone is familiar with. In this plot of a pedestrian, each spike represents one step taken. However, there is another representation, also called a time frequency representation, which we can use. This is achieved through the use of a short time Fourier transform. This transform converts the information in small time windows, each of zero point 0.1 seconds, to the respective spectral content. For a pedestrian, we can see that each step is a large spike of energy in all frequencies. Instead of using the usual Hertz scale for frequency, we are using a Mel scale, which is a logarithmic scale that compresses information in multiple frequencies to a singular Mel band. Or in this representation, called a Mel frequency representation, the information of 8000 frequencies or 8000 Hertz is represented only using 128 Mel bands. This leads to much smaller and much manageable data sizes which can be easily processed through data processing methods. Similarly, we can visualize traffic data using a Mel spectrogram. Such events are much shorter as compared to pedestrian or runner events and have a smoother energy spread in the time domain. Instead of using microphones, we can use digital seismometers mounted near sidewalks to collect acoustic vibration data from urban events. This data was recorded near the northwestern parking garage at Purdue University, and the circle in yellow represents the location of a seismometer. We can see that the Mel spectrograms of this data is very similar to the Mel spectrogram of the data recording using audio, in that for a runner there are spikes across the entire frequency spectrum, and for a car the information is spread both in time and in frequency. We use two types of neural networks to identify the presence of these events in our data. The first is a convolutional neural network, which, as its name suggests, uses convolution to extract features from the input data. It also uses a technique called as pooling, which downsamples the data to preserve the most significant information while discarding the rest of it. This is mostly used for image data, as we have successfully converted our one-dimensional audio data into a two-dimensional representation. We can effectively use this technique for processing. The second type of network is called a recurrent neural network, or an RNN. The convolution is a memoryless process in that the output at a given time does not depend on the past input. However, the spectral content in a spectrogram at any given time is dependent on the content in the previous window. Hence, our network needs to have a notion of memory. When a recurrent neural network is fed with in some input data, it stores some of it in a memory cell and uses it for future computations, hence adding memory to our network. These type of networks are mostly used to analyze time series data like we have right now. Our event information is stored as a JSON file, which contains the start times and stop times for different events. This information cannot be directly used by a network and hence needs to be converted into a usable format. We use one-hot encoding to convert our data into a time series of ones and zeros, which represents the presence or absence of a particular event. This data can now be used as a label for our network for the training. Our training pipeline is as follows. We send in a 10-second seismic data which is sampled at 1000 Hz. This is converted into a Mel spectrogram representation of 64 Mel bands and a window length of zero point 0.1 seconds. This data is fed into a convolutional neural network which applies pooling both in the time and frequency domains. Hence, the resulting output is a 25 by 1 vector, with each cell of the vector representing information of 0.4 seconds. This data is then sent to an RNN, which outputs the probability of an event happening in each cell. The network was trained over 20 epochs using 100,000 training samples. We employed a semi-supervised mean-teacher tuning strategy to leverage all of our unlabeled data as well. These plots are the outputs of a neural network with the event label and the prediction overlay. The red line represents the true presence of a pedestrian, while the orange is the prediction. Similarly, the green line is the true presence of a vehicle, with the blue line being the prediction by the network. We can observe that the network has learned to differentiate between these two events and accurately detect their presence in a MEL spectrogram. It can also give accurate predictions when the events are overlapping in time. We have another set of outputs in which the network tries to identify single as well as multiple pedestrian and traffic events. Hence, the network can be effectively used to accurately predict the presence of multiple events in a singular time frequencies representation of a signal. Thank you.